Hello everyone, I'm Rosalind Hayes from the Downingtown Music Academy, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about benefits of music that you might not be super aware of. And one of those benefits is the idea that music can help with mental health and with certain emotional regulation skills, especially with children who are struggling with certain needs, where if that need is related to focus related conditions like autism or ADHD, or whether we're talking about a child that might struggle with some mental health issues like depression or anxiety, and how music can be a release for some of these challenges and can really give them a much needed outlet and the structure that they need to help them process some of these big feelings in a safe way. So some of you may not know that previously, for a while, I was a board certified music therapist, and I completed my graduate degree at Drexel University in music therapy almost 10 years ago now. I did decide to let that licensure expire because there wasn't really the need for it in this location, but I would be remiss if I did say that I did not draw upon a lot of the concepts that I learned from this degree in music therapy. And a few of the things that we talked about, I'm going to talk about today. One thing is the big concept of how music actually impacts the brain, and how it's processed in the brain. And when we listen to music, much like if we were to take a psycho active drug of some kind, or any sort of pleasurable experience, there is a dopamine release that comes with listening to and practicing music. And this is why when we're infants, we enjoy hearing lullabies, because there's a sense of tension in the music that's created by the patterns of notes that clash initially, and then they're resolved later on in the song. And what that does for an infant is it helps them to tense and release those muscles, kind of like in progressive muscle relaxation therapy or something. It helps them to release that tension. So it releases cortisol, and then the resolution of those clashing notes actually creates a dopamine response in the brain, which is associated with pleasure. As we go throughout our music careers, those of us who have spent more time in music generally crave a little bit more tension in music than those of us who have not experienced that much music. But the reason why I'm telling you this is because that tension and release can be a really good constructive way to process some of these difficult feelings around anxiety or depression, and help us to work through them in a healthy way. In psychology, we call this sublimation. So the idea, if you think about sublimation, like with ice, for example, the ice cube goes directly from a solid into a gas. So in sublimation, in psychology, what we're doing, we're taking a difficult emotion to process, and we are putting it into something constructive, such as an art form. A lot of take with what this information with what you will, but a lot of our artists out there, like Jackson Pollock, for example, or Van Gogh, had mental health disorders that they process through their art. And this is actually considered a healthy coping mechanism. So to put your emotion into something constructive and creative, rather than doing something aggressive, rather than repressing that emotion, is a healthy way to process that difficult emotion. And it definitely could help kids to process some of these more difficult emotions in a way that doesn't feel maybe sometimes as intrusive as even talk therapy does, because they can project on something, they can create kind of a healthy wall between themselves and these difficult to process situations, and they can create a protection that doesn't feel so intrusive. They can project those feelings onto the music and process their emotions that way. So they're not just repressing or suppressing emotions, but they're allowed to explore those emotions in a healthy way without feeling like those boundaries or those walls are getting trampled on. I had a student client some time ago, before I'd let that music therapy license lapse, who was a teenage girl dealing with pretty severe depression, pretty severe bullying issues, and engaging in self-harm behaviors as a way to release those emotions. So in some ways, like, she was trying to search for something to let go of the emotions, to help draw her back into the present moment, rather than having her brain kind of on this negative loop. So when we do those kind of behaviors, that's one way that we're trying to break out of that negative thought pattern cycle. What I encourage her to do instead, because obviously we don't want those self-harming behaviors, what I encouraged her to do instead was actually go to the piano and play. And she was a phenomenal piano player. And I actually told her to go to the piano and just improvise and didn't have to set lyrics with it, so it didn't feel intrusive. There was no one asking her, how do you feel about that? Or tell me about what's going on. She could just process these difficult emotions through the creative process of actually creating music. So what we eventually did was we started to put these little voice memos that she recorded these. We listened to them together, and we put them in to almost like an audio journal. And you can notice as she was going through the process of improvising music, and sometimes she was saying she was doing it 3-4 hours a day, fine, as long as it's a way to process those difficult emotions and not engage in those self-harm behaviors for right now. If that's what we need to do, that's a step up. So as she was going through that process, we were slowly starting to hear that the music was transforming. It was going from something that was very minor, which is very sad sounding, to something to a much more major. Okay, so her emotions had a release. And when she was in talk therapy previously, it didn't really jive with her. And part of the reason is because the therapist was telling her, you like music, go listen to happy music. But that was not meeting her where she was. And one of the things that we speak about in music therapy a lot is meeting the person where they are. So if they're in a sad, blue place or an anxious, ridden place, then they may need to have the music meet them there first, and then slowly work their way out of it. You can't just be in a sad, depressive state and then listen to Happy by Pharrell and suddenly things are, totally different, because it just doesn't match. It's too much of a mismatch of where you are. So it's okay, to listen to and play through that sad music, to process those emotions and release them, and to have that catharsis that allows you to move up into more healthy emotional states. Not that it's not healthy to feel sad, but to get stuck there, So we process that sadness and we work our way through and we work our way up. Then, some of the other things that can come out of this, and in her case came out of this, is she developed a feeling of confidence, right? So she started to see that the piano was a real skill of hers, an amazing talent that other people did not have. And that was something that she could hold to, that made her feel special when maybe she wasn't always feeling so great about herself. And hearing that from me, but not only for me, but listening back to the evidence herself. And then slowly she started working with some of the other students, accompanying them on piano and things, and hearing from some other girls her age and getting that validation went so far. So music can inspire that confidence too, right? So we have a way to release painful experiences and work our way back into pleasure because of that contrast in music, that tension and release, and that sublimation. We also have something that's creating confidence and giving us a healthy space for self-expression that's non-judgmental, that we don't immediately have to leap up to happiness, but we can work our way through there without feeling like our boundaries are being trod on. And the last point of this too is that we can work on increasing socialization through music, which can be so helpful. Loneliness is such a big epidemic now, especially after COVID, that we feel disconnected from each other a lot. Music can be a way to find connection again. Because as I always tell my students, your job when you're performing, not that everybody wants to perform, but your job when you're performing is to go in front of that audience. It is not to make them feel as impressed as they possibly can be and say, wow, my socks were just blown off, that person was amazing. No, your job is to go up there and give them permission in the audience to process and explore their emotional lives through your exploration of it. You're saying, hey, I'm allowing myself to get into a flow state with the music, to feel connected to whatever emotions it brings up, so that those people can then project onto the music what they need to project and process those difficult feelings and those happy feelings and whatever else comes up for them. Because it's about the human condition above everything else. So, and then, of course, if we were to bring in other people into the equation, other band members, other students playing as a group, there's that sense of community too that gets created. And I'll leave you with one last thing, and that's one of the things that keeps me going in what I'm doing, that I'm trying to create a sense of community here with this studio and with the businesses in the area and with students of mine connecting with other students and just making the sense of togetherness created through art. That's what we're trying to do here. So, and that's the point of this. So these are all ways that music can be such a big driving force in dealing with those challenging emotions and helping with emotional self-regulation. There are many, many more transfer effects of music, like improving literacy, improving motor skills, improving oral skills, obviously, improving focus, that I could go on and on about all day. But when push comes to shove, this is one of the biggest motivators for people. And that's why I'm not here to choose your music for you or be a drill sergeant. I'm here to be a guide, and I'm here to help you along the way to getting what you need out of your musical experience and giving you all the tools to do that. So if you're interested in coming on this journey with me, please feel to reach out to the Downingtown Music Academy, and we'd be happy to take you on board.